Hello. If you're watching this, then you probably have looked into buying a house, or maybe you're just a little bit interested on how to actually structure an offer. And then maybe you're working with me and I sent you this video. And the reason why I have this video is not only for my clients, but for any client that wants to know how an offer in real estate works. You can watch this video and you'll become a better decision maker for yourself when it comes to putting together the strongest offer and also the most preferable offer for you at the same time. So that way when it's delivered to the seller, it looks great, but also puts you in line to get the house. Welcome to How to Write an Offer with Michael Stanley with Remax Homestead. First things first, what is an offer? Well, an offer is that first piece of paperwork that goes to the seller on your behalf that shows them how much you're willing to pay for their house. Not only is that price important, but there are also a couple key elements that we're going to talk about for you to consider to make your offer strong, but also preferable for your finances. So the first key element is obviously how much you want to pay for their house. Let's say you have a house that's listed and it's listed for $260,000. Do you feel like it's worth $260,000? Do you feel like it's worth more? Now I know we're not all appraisal experts, so that's why you have a real estate agent. The real estate agent will pull comparables in the area and they'll assure you whether you're offering too much or not enough for the house. So let's get down to the elements of the offer that actually inspired me to make this video. Now, most people know that when you make an offer on a house, it includes that offer price, how much you're willing to pay. But what most people don't know are there are other elements when it comes to presenting strength and also showing the seller that you not only want their house, but you're the one person they should pick. That first thing we're going to talk about is the due diligence. Due diligence is an amount of money that the seller is going to receive from you after the contract is accepted. It can go in certified check, it can go in cash, or it can be a wire transfer. Most clients that I work with, I allow them to get that certified check because the bank's going to certify it, so there's no worries about bouncing checks on that side. And also, the seller's going to feel more comfortable knowing that any type of funds that they receive are certified and they're for real. You might be asking yourself, how much? How much do I give for due diligence? Well, let's talk about what it is first. Due diligence is an amount of money, like I said, that's going to go straight to the seller. Will you ever receive that money back? Well, it depends on if the contract is executed or not. Will you receive that amount of money back? No, you won't. But it will come off the end price or the offer price for the mortgage. Let's say you did $125,000 offer, they accepted, and you gave them $500 in due diligence money. Well, at the end, when you get that key, you actually paid $124,500 for the mortgage, and it was almost like you gave a down payment. Now, the reason why this is part of the contract, and also it's an optional term to the contract, is because you don't get that money back. So let's say you get $500 in due diligence. Well, what if the inspection goes bad? What happens then? Well, you as an offer of due diligence, you're going to eat that money. And that's why it's important to understand what due diligence is and what it is in comparison to what we're going to talk about next, which is EMD or earnest money. So now let's talk about EMD or earnest money. Well, it's an upfront amount of money just like it was with the due diligence, except the receiving party is either going to be a trust account holder at a firm or at the escrow agent that's going to be taking care of the transaction. So like the lawyer, they're going to hold on to it till the end. Well, what's the difference between that and due diligence then? Well, one, it didn't go to the seller, and two, if something goes wrong that's out of your control, such as an inspection violation that you wanted something fixed and they wouldn't agree to it, well, that's what that earnest money's there for. It will come back to you as long as you as the buyer didn't break the contract in a way that could be seen as fraudful or illegal. Just like due diligence, you might ask yourself, how much EMD or earnest money should I provide in the contract offer? Well, again, it comes down to personal preferences and how much money do you have on hand to put out into the offer and get it accepted without going bankrupt, right? Or just using too much money. Well, it's simple. Again, it comes back to your real estate agent. They're there to advise you. They'll tell you what the market usually does in this area and how much money people provide in EMD, usually, per their experience. They'll also tell you what amount is going to bring strength because honestly, EMD sometimes is not the preferable option because sellers want that money in their hands. Why? Because if you give due diligence, then that seller has money in their hands to take care of anything that they need, whether it's move out cost, or maybe they need to pay a mortgage payment, or maybe they need to pay any type of bill fees that comes from cutting off the bills from that house and reinstating them wherever they're moving. There's a lot of different things that due diligence money straight to the seller could use or be used for. But that EMD is going to sit in a trust account. Sellers can't touch it. And at the end, it's going to come off that end mortgage number just like it did in the due diligence, except there's a chance that you can get that money back if things go wrong with the deal in your favor as a buyer. as long as it's not fraudful, illegal. So let's talk about the next thing. Let's talk about the pre-approval letter. So a lot of real estate agents know and exercise the option to request a pre-approval letter when it comes to showing a house or offering a house contract. It's very important because it needs to connect the agent with the buyer to understand what you're able to purchase. What is your price point or price range? Well, let's talk about this. We don't want to go under contract for something that you cannot get a loan for. Even further, we want to know how long it takes to you get to the closing table. So what mortgage company did you go with? What is their time frame for closing? Because that has to be included in the offer. A seller doesn't want to accept an offer for somebody that's going to take 80 days to close because the mortgage loan process is too long. They want somebody that can close in 30 to 45 days. And that's why it's important for you to select a good lender. And it's also important for the real estate agent to advise you on the time frame that the lender is giving. That way you can understand, and if you need to choose a different lender, then maybe you can choose a different lender and make a decision better for you. And if you don't, then at least a real estate agent will have the opportunity to put the right time frame down so it won't put you in a pickle later on down the road. Let's talk about seller allowances. Now, back in the day, as close as 2020, seller allowances were a thing that were exercised all of the time. When I bought my personal house in March of 2020, I got closing costs paid for by the seller. Now, there was some money fluctuation in how we made the offer, and it could still be done today, but it's important to come into the deal monetarily ready to cover closing costs. Now, you as a buyer, you don't have to worry about paying a real estate agent most times, unless you're under a deal with a for sale by owner or there's some strict contingencies in your buyer agency agreement. Most of the time as a buyer, the seller's going to pay your realtor fees, but you as a buyer, you're going to have to cover the closing costs, the funding fees, and things that come from the mortgage companies. This is all dependent on the price of the house because most of them are percentages of that sale price. That's why it's important to ask and consult with your real estate agent when it comes to the seller allowances and anything that you're trying to request. But if I'm being honest, especially today's market in August of 2021, it is very hard to find a real estate agent that is able to negotiate that seller's allowance and keep you out of closing costs. But if you have a strong offer and you're offering a little bit more than asking price, then maybe there's an opportunity to cover a closing cost on this side of the deal. You never know unless you negotiate, and you never know what they're going to say unless you submit the offer. But it's very important to listen to your real estate agent's advice because they know the market, they know the housing area, and they have contact with the other agent, so they can give you the best advice. We've talked about the overall asking price, right? So what are you willing to pay for a house? Is it too much? Is it just right? Or is it too low? Too low is never going to get you an accepted offer unless they just can't sell their house. And too high, you're going to run into appraisal issues later down the road where the house doesn't appraise as much as you think it's worth. So then it's back to the negotiation table, or you're going to have to cover down on that money and whatever gap there is between what it's worth and what you're going to pay for or what you contracted yourself to pay for. Then it comes down to due diligence. That's that money that goes straight to the seller, whether it's via personal check, certified check, or it could be a wire transfer. Most of the times, due diligence, we try to stay with the checks, but more preferably the certified check. The seller's going to be happy to receive a check that is already withdrawal funds, so they don't have to worry about any bounced checks. And what they're going to do is they're going to use that money however they like. And then if the contract continues to progress all the way to closing and you as the buyer, you get the keys, well then that money comes off the mortgage amount at the end. If it doesn't make it there, you lose out on that money. The same thing with EMD, except the opportunity for you to regain that money really depends on why you broke the contract. Did you break it the right way, meaning you asked for repairs with an inspection, or the appraisal, if you had a VA appraisal, maybe they needed repairs? Something was wrong and the seller just refused to go along and do the right thing to help fix it? Well, then maybe you can get your earnest money back. But if you just walk away from the contract, especially out of the period where the 14-ish days after the contract is accepted, then you're not going to get that money back either. So it's very important when you make an offer and you submit that EMD, earnest money, or due diligence, that you're ready to lose the money, or you're very, very sure that this is the house that you actually want. And if that's the case, there's no worry about losing your money. Last, we talked about pre-approval letters and also seller allowances. All of this can be wrapped up in one short statement. Let your realtor advise you. If you don't have a realtor, get a realtor that can advise you, because if you have somebody in your corner, then you have a team for success. Think about the best boxers in the world. Their corners weren't empty. The best fighters in the world. How about the best gymnast or any sport? They have a team. They have a coach. They have advisors, they have mentors, and they're leaders themselves. So why would you do this? Try to buy the biggest investment of your life, or one of the biggest, without the right advice. The right advice from an escrow agent or a lawyer, the right advice from a real estate agent, and also the right advice from the systems that are there to allow you to be successful. So with all that being said, it's very important to understand that all of this can be summed up in one statement. Let your real estate agent advise you. And if you are my client, then I'm constantly doing that. I'm constantly talking to you about not only your financial situation, what you're able to do, but also presenting the houses to you that not only can you afford, but you have the ability to actually get an offer accepted on. It's very important to them to advise you and for you to listen and gain the knowledge each and every time they are advising. But just in case you don't understand, that's what these videos are for. It gives you something to go and look back on, whether you're a buyer or a seller, because if you're selling your home, well, at least this information in this video will help you understand the important information that's being presented to you when you see the contract for someone trying to buy your house. And if you're a buyer, I mean, it's as clean cut as possible for you to understand that this is your way to get in your new home. Either way, I would love to help you. I would love to help you understand. I would love to go through your home buying or home selling journey. And I'd love for you to meet with Michael so that we can do this thing.